Sure. Great. Well, welcome everyone here tonight. So glad to see you all here on our November, our monthly New York, our Climate Reality Project, New York City Metro meeting. And it's especially important that we're meeting tonight. It's a month after COP26 in Glasgow. And so much to discuss in terms of that. And also it's November, and I think it's really important because it's Native American Heritage Month, and we're going to be talking about what are we going to do with all of these fossil fuels? How are we going to move forward with these industries destroying our beautiful land? But before that, I would like to proceed with the Jemez principles, which we here at Climate Reality Project run our, we base our working together on the Jemez principles. And so those are, number one, that we are inclusive. And if we have this desire, this dream, this want to achieve just societies, which include all people. And of course, in order to create this, to visualize it, to enact it, we have to embody that principle in ourselves. And the second of the 6 Jemez principle is an emphasis on bottom-up organizing. We like to hear from different perspectives and take in all voices. The third thing is relating to that is allowing people to speak for themselves. We don't condone well, what you meant to say was. We let people say what they say. And then we also work together in solidarity and mutuality. And what this means is that groups that are working on similar issues with compatible visions should consciously act in solidarity, which I think we're seeing tonight. We also work and strive towards building just relationships among ourselves. And we have a commitment to self-transformation, because as we change societies, we realize and know that we have to change from operating on this mode of individualism, which I sort of see as a disease of our era, this individualism, and moving more towards community centeredness. So that's the Jemez principles. And I'd mentioned Native American History Month. I know that Thanksgiving is coming up too. And the reason I sort of emphasize Native American History Month is we're having these amazing panelists who will be speaking about their work on fossil fuel industries and working hopefully to end these subsidies, which at a tune of over $400 billion every year that we give these industries to destroy our planet, to destroy native lands, and to destroy our health, it's time to stop. It is time to stop. And I want to introduce someone who I met when I was in Glasgow, COP26. She was speaking on a youth climate activist panel with Rupert Reed, and that is Meera Dasgupta. And I was so moved by what she had to share and her beautiful poetry that I just knew that we had to have her here for this meeting tonight. And so happy that she agreed to join us. And I just want to give a brief bio. Meera Dasgupta is, number one, she's a New Yorker, and she's also the 2020 United States Youth Poet Laureate. She's the youngest person to earn her title and the first Asian American. So Ms. Dasgupta was born in Queens, New York, and she's a graduate of Stuyvesant High School, and she's going to be matriculating at the University of Chicago next year. So we're very happy for her. And she's also an advocate for several causes, including gender equality and climate action. And Ms. Dasgupta has received several fellowships and is the 2019 Climate Speaks winner. She currently serves as a 2020-2021 UNA USA Global Goals Ambassador for Sustainable Development Goal 15, Life on Land. So with that, I cede my time to the wonderful Meera Dasgupta and her beautiful melody of words.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to be reading a poem that I did read at COP, that is Lineage, and it details how, in terms of climate action and climate change, we have to have intergenerational, interdisciplinary, and intersectional conversations about these issues, because it's so important in terms of creating sustainable solutions for the world as we move into the future, because the future is now. So this is Lineage. Lineage. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. A Native American proverb. There is a mother here. Her skin has known the salt of broken oceans. Her hands have traced the sun until it became her. She learned respect from a father and his hands, how the bones of dead flowers made their garden a burial ground. Her body was her family's burial ground. Her mouth an untamed flame. It escaped and left her with a vase. In it, her reflection appeared and shattered. There is a brother here. He has learned to breathe air as dark as his skin. There are no lights in a city of stars that do not reach him. Some days he feels paper weight. In his dreams, he is flying. He's forgotten the smell of grass and his mother. He's forgotten the sounds of the wind, what it means to fly. In his dreams, he carries a star in his pocket, but it burns from the inside out. It reminds him of himself, that there is a burning within him. There is a father here. He overflows into his mother's garden. Her flames lick his stubborn skin as he swallows the ocean whole. He writes odes to himself until his blood becomes a dead rose. And as the sea levels rise, as they run like a crimson-mouthed psalm, as children curl like wayward leaves, as storms shake their sea blue hands, as these hands overturn burial grounds, as burial grounds become his mother, a father becomes a son in mourning. There is a daughter here. She's been taught how to sustain on seeds, but to never settle for them, to treat the grounds as she treats her body, to till the earth until she too is the sun. When morning arrives, she finds the shattered reflections of her mother and recalls the pieces. Countless oceans converging where she stands, you can hear an echo of lineage. The sound of 1,000 daughters, mothers, sons, and fathers. How they become a garden. How their voices bloom among the scattered bones and carry, like seeds, to wind. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Yes. Hi, my name's Philip Kahn, and I'm going to introduce the speakers for the next section of our program. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having Kim Fraczek of the Sane Energy Project speak, and Anthony Rogers-Wright of the New York Lawyers for Public Interest, and Patty Cronheim, the campaign director for the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. Kim will be our first speaker. The Sane Energy Project is committed to replacing frack gas infrastructure with community-led sustainable energy, and was formed in January 2011 to oppose the first of several frack gas pipelines entering New York from the new high-volume fracking boom in Pennsylvania. Sane Energy's mission is to build a potent grassroots movement pushing for a rapid and just transition to 100% publicly owned renewable and sustainable energy in New York. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much. And Meera, that was absolutely beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. That was just stunning. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm also going to put my timer on so we can keep ourselves all on time. So just quickly, our mission, yes, is to build a powerful grassroots movement, moving to 100% renewable, community-owned public power. And we make sure that we build all of our campaigns through a lens of racial, social, and economic justice. We know the solutions are here. We know that climate change is real. We know that inequity goes hand in hand with climate change, and we work to make sure that we are always listening to local residents, anybody that we work with, and we're making sure that we sculpt all of our campaigns with multiple voices that help to drive that work. One of the first projects that we built was a map of all the fracking infrastructure in our region. So we knew that we banned fracking in 2014 in New York State, but we know that the infrastructure was growing, and we were still supporting the fracking industry that was happening in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, with allowing pipelines and compressor stations and power plants and water theft and waste dumps to happen in New York State. So what we did is we built a map together with communities that were fighting these very esoteric projects. It wasn't just a clean, ban fracking. It was like, there's a compressor station here. How do you learn about what a compressor station is? Well, you get together and you talk to your neighbors and you figure this out. But in order to really make sense of what the comprehensive view of the fracking industry looked like, we decided to work together with an organization called Frack Tracker Alliance and put together an incredible map. So we really could see the comprehensive view of what the fracking industry was doing to us. We knew that where we see our homes, our work, our families, our loved ones, where we love to go vacation and hike, that was not how the fracking industry was seeing us. They were seeing us as a place to drill, to store. They were seeing us as a market, not as families or individuals with spiritual connections to the planet that we live on. Within this map, you can go and see it. It's live. It's interactive. So you go to youareheremap.org. You can see stories of local residents who have fought or are currently fighting, because we want to make sure that we connect neighbors to organizations that are doing the work, so we can make sure the movement is growing and connecting with each other. And you can read all about how this is health impacts. All of the dots on this map connect to the Physicians for Social Responsibility fracking compendium that comes out every year and gets updated. So you can read about what's happening in your neighborhood. When you type in, you can type in your zip code or your address, and you can find out what's happening and what that means, and what that means for your health and safety and your democracy. We also began a partnership with the Native Land Digital. They have also made a map of all of the indigenous nations that we are occupying here on stolen land where we are, and we're so excited to build this partnership with them, because we know that the face of extraction with the fracking map that we made is the same map of extraction of colonialism and settler behavior. And so the fossil fuel industry is just an excerpt or another face of that extraction. So we want to make sure that people have a very clear understanding that colonialism and the fossil fuel industry are deeply intertwined and connected. So you can also go and visit this map and type in your zip code, and you can find out the indigenous land that you occupy. We have also participated with the Movement Generation, who is such an incredible environmental justice group of so many different people. And they have laid out a framework of how to move from an extractive economy where we are now and move towards a regenerative and a living economy that can serve every life on this earth. And we know that we can do it. And we know that takes having to readjust how our worldview works. So going with that work to fight the fossil fuel industry in our hearts, we make sure that we use that view of like, we need to move away from the reality and the worldview that we are in now if we want to tackle the fossil fuel industry and mitigate climate change and address it and be resilient. So some of the tactics that we use, we do a lot of community education events. We also build what people learn in those education events into demonstrations and show our numbers in the streets and talk to neighbors. We do use direct action when we need to. This is a photo of a pipeline that we occupied for 18 hours right next to the Indian Point nuclear power plant. Spectra Energy, now known as Enbridge, was building a high pressure fracked gas pipeline 105 feet away from critical safety infrastructure at Indian Point nuclear power plant, which if there was a rupture or an explosion, that would be game over for the New York City metropolitan area of 25 million people. So we did have to use direct action because we weren't being listened to. And we halted the construction there, which was wonderful. We also focus on community empowerment. We use a lot of art. We use a lot of events where we do deep listening, exploring solutions and dreaming together, making sure that everything that we tackle with the fossil fuel industry, we're intersecting with the many different issues: migration, mass incarceration, and things like that. And we also do a lot of skill sharing, because if I'm the only graphic designer in our big group, that's not helping to empower our group. So we want to make sure everybody has the skills to be able to move forward in this movement. We also use lawsuits. We've had to sue National Grid, a corporation that we are fighting right now that has a monopoly stranglehold of heating and cooling in the New York City area and a little bit upstate as well. They're building a massive fracked gas pipeline dissecting right through Brooklyn and targeting Black and Brown communities to build this unnecessary, dangerous, and climate-causing project. And then we also work on legislation, because we gotta also exercise that part of our system. So a couple of things that Sane Energy Project will be working on in the 2022 legislative session is working on a suite of legislation housed under the Renewable Heat Now Coalition to ban fracked gas statewide by doing an all electrics buildings act, as well as supportive infrastructure. It is a legislative suite of 4 bills. And then also banning the corporate middleman and fighting for public power. We believe these are 2 incredible legislative tactics that are going to help to address those systemic issues that keep us locked into a system of extraction. So within the Renewable Heat Now legislative package, we have an executive arm of that. We're working with Governor Hochul and trying to basically make her include in the state of the state a commitment to electrifying New York with renewable energy. And then we have 4 legislative goals underneath that house. So we sort of built a house, and within that house, or as a puzzle piece, we want to change. We have to change the codes, the buildings, the tax credits and incentives, and we need to change the public service law that will affect how the utilities operate. So this is something that you can definitely dive into, that I'm going to encourage you all to sign up for, and I will put links in the chat. And then also we are working towards the New York Build Public Renewables Act that will help to further public power in New York and take away the corporate middlemen that are dominating our industry and keeping us locked into fossil fuels. So I just want to remind you the way the industry sees our region, and I want to remind you of what we can build together and how we can see our region, and we can add even more to this. The more we dream together, the more that we have a point B to work towards, and we can achieve those goals. And this is my email address and my telephone number. You can write to me or definitely text me anytime, any kinds of questions you have. And that is it for me.
Thank you very much, Kim, for that timely presentation. You came right in on time. It's very good. Thank you so much. Very interesting. Anthony Rogers-Wright of the New York Lawyers for Public Interest is our next speaker. He's going to speak on behalf of the PEAK Coalition, which is comprised of UPROSE, the Point CDC, New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, and the Clean Energy Group. This coalition is the first comprehensive effort in the US to reduce the negative and racially disproportionate health impacts of a city's peaker plants and replacing them with renewable energy and storage solutions. Thank you for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Always an honor to be here with my sister Kim, a comrade at arms who, and you know, if you're going to try to bring frack gas into New York State, you're going to have to contend with this sister, and always the consummate organizer. I mean, look what you just put in the chat. I will email this presentation to y'all afterwards because I am not a natural organizer like him. I'm just a policy advocate and a bit of a smack talker. But let's try to share my screen now, and we will get going here. And let's see. So, you know, for all the amazing things that Kim talked about, you know, going back to when we were able to force the hand of the former governor to ban fracking, largely in part to people and organizations like Clean Energy Project, the great Sandra Steingraber, previously of Ithaca College, did bring us to a moment where we are at now, where we do have a massive fossil fuel inertia in New York State. And I do want to talk about that with you now. And I'm going to start my timer now and follow good practice, because that's what organizers do. They follow good practice of better organizers. First and foremost, we really have to talk about what we're talking about when we use this term climate change. It really is a system of oppression. I think Kim hit on it when we were talking about stolen indigenous land that we all occupy. The three root causes in the minds of many of the environmental justice organizations I have the honor of partnering with include white supremacy, colonization, as Kim lifted up, and hyperpatriarchy, heteropatriarchy as well. This is the intersection of what forms this larger system of the climate crisis. And I think our good brother Hop Hopkins of the Sierra Club puts it, it just adroitly breaks it down when he, this quote of, you cannot have climate change without sacrifice zones, can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism. These crises that we find ourselves in are interlinked. COVID-19, the same people disproportionately impacted by that pandemic are the same people disproportionately impacted by a climate crisis that they had little hand in creating. And that's very, very important framing. This should be a little funny. Great minds apparently think alike when we're talking about how we address this crisis. It's a top-down and a bottom-up process. Kim touched on this, and this yes does come from Climate Justice Alliance members of Movement Generation. We are trying to draw down federal dollars and draw up grassroots justice and grassroots organizing, and we'll get more into that in a moment. You know, I'm so happy that we have the young sister Meera. Again, I do have to give you props. That was amazing. As I said in the chat, that's what renewable, true renewable and regenerative energy looks like. That's what a feminist economy looks like. And we also have to be honest about the fact that this conference of parties, as I say in an article I had the honor of writing with the Black Agenda Report recently, was really capitalism over people. Since Paris, which was my first COP, I've gone to two and no more, because I can't anymore. I understand, as I said in the piece, that the science of climate change is very, very simple. We have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and leave about 80%, if not more, of remaining fossil fuel deposits underground where they are to avert the 1.5 degree threshold. And I say 1.5 specifically because 2.0 means that we will be sacrificing indigenous, Black, brown, Asian, and yes, poor white people. So 1.5 is our limit. That doesn't mean we get to keep digging, emitting, and burning until we get to 1.5. It means we have to take measures right now, whether it's banning fracking and frack gas infrastructure and all other forms of greenhouse gas emissions. And to put that into dollars and cents, That's roughly $22 trillion, and that's the low end of keeping 80% of remaining fossil fuel deposits in the ground. So what we learned, especially from this COP that just happened, is that global problems require efficacious local solutions, and that's why we're so thankful for groups like Clean Energy Project and so many other grassroots organizations throughout New York State that understand that the way we're really going to confront this crisis and get to a global consciousness is first starting at the local and the state level. And here's an example of that. We know in New York City, it starts with environmental justice communities or allies and accomplices like Kim and Clean Energy Projects, and the organizations accountable to them that will scale up and scale out our solutions. In the city level, we started with the Climate Mobilization Act. This is well before anybody started uttering Green New Deal, y'all, where we understood that our biggest emitters and users of fossil fuels were our buildings, more than half of the emissions in New York City. So we came up with Local Law 97 and passed that. That in turn informed was arguably referred to as the most aggressive piece of climate policy in the country, if not the world, the landmark Watershed Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which I'll get into more in a moment. And that we're already seeing is having influence at the federal level, and we hope to see it implemented. When you hear about Justice 40 or this idea that 40% of investments and benefits must go to those most impacted disproportionately by this crisis, that comes out of New York. And it's just a great time to be a New Yorker. It reminds me of sort of like, I like to say the West Coast, East Coast beef of hip hop. Just like New York won that fight, we have taken the title from California. We are the leader of climate justice action in the country, and we have to continue that. So very, very important. The Climate Leadership Community Protection Act mandates for a fossil fuel phase out, 85% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. That could be a little late. We can accelerate that. 100% zero emissions electricity by 2040, 70% renewable, not net zero, not clean energy, renewable. And that's so important because semantics in this case have very big implications and so many other aspects. Kim showed that in her map. 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind by 2035, 3,000 megawatts of energy storage by 2030, and 6,000 megawatts of solar. And we also know that 22 million tons of carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide equivalents, including frack gas, not natural gas, frack gas, also will be phased out as a result of this act. And not to mention the good paying, unionized, family wage sustaining jobs that will be created in the process. So extremely important act. And what this means, we're seeing it in action now. We just saw it the day after Halloween. It wasn't trick or treat, it was just a treat. Our Department of Environmental Conservation, not exactly the Jacobins of New York, but because of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, denied 2 frack gas peaker plants, permits for peaker plants in Astoria and Newburgh, New York, because they were incompatible with our state's climate goals. And specifically, as you can see in the headline, New York regulators announced they denied air permits for 2 natural gas-fired power plants as the projects did not align with our goals. This is huge. And let's just dig into what this means. So first, before I get into that, it's very, very important. And we're having a little bit of static and some beef within our environmental community of what we refer to as real solutions. New York, in this ruling that DEC just made, also stated that New York is no country for false solutions. And what we mean by false solutions, or what I like to refer to as green unicorns, include this idea of carbon capture, sequestration, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, so-called hydrogen combustion, geoengineering, an idea that we will shoot particles into the sky, solar radiation, also, and it all stems around this idea of net zero emissions, which is essentially the idea that we can keep emitting status quo of dig, dump, and burn as long as we come up with these solutions to sequester our emissions. It would be the equivalent of me knowing that I had to go on a diet, but one day binging on a bunch of food and calling a friend of mine and saying, don't eat today to offset all the food that I ate. It doesn't work. And we know now, 3 scientists who explicitly said in a recent report that net zero is recklessly cavalier, burn now, pay later approach that has seen carbon emissions soar. So there's no country, New York is no country for these solutions. And DEC breaks it down why. Let's take hydrogen for an example. in their decision to deny the permits in Astoria and Newburgh, DEC said the applicant's plans for a compliance with the Climate Act, in this case CLCPA, by 2040 for emissions-free electricity by 2040 is uncertain and speculative, and the feasibility has not been established for RNG or renewable natural gas, which is obviously an oxymoron, where hydrogen is a compliance pathway. So the big decision for really phasing out fossil fuels in our state: no more frac gas can be used, no idea of renewable frac gas, and also no carbon capture sequestration, which blue hydrogen utilizes as part of its production. CCS, or carbon capture, does also not pass the CLCPA test. It does not allow for the proliferation. I call it technology because it's not technology, because we just said no to it in New York State. We know that the mass majority of so-called carbon capture, the carbon dioxide that is captured, is used for enhanced oil recovery, which is essentially a fancy way of saying fracking. It's injected underground to allow for the release of more oil to be emitted into the sky. So what I actually call it is carbon catch and release. That's what it really boils down to, because it pumps carbon dioxide underground to force more oil out of wells, which is what we've seen before. And also, because we have to get to zero emissions economy-wide in New York State, this is what we're seeing right now. This is the reality of CCS, or so-called direct air capture. It emits 1.4 to 4.7 tons of carbon dioxide for each ton removed. So you're still emitting emissions, right? It doesn't make any sense when all of that money, and we're seeing so much money coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure framework being dedicated to these false solution, profligate and unproven technologies, and we have to tell the truth. Direct air capture, carbon capture, blue hydrogen, these are all fossil fuel subsidies because they continue the lifeline of the fossil fuel industry. But the good news is that we have a force field now in New York and there's no room for them. So actually, I think I stopped. Look at that. That's my timer right on time. That is my TED Talk. I really look forward to getting into this more with all of you. But please join us. Please join St. Energy Project. Please join Peak Coalition, New York Renews Coalition, and also sending a message to our elected leaders that we have to get serious. There's no more time, right? We are going to avert 1.5 unless we get serious. We want renewable, regenerative economies, not clean energy, but renewable energy. So I'll stop there, and thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony, for that very good presentation. Very interesting. And I hope to get your slides that you're going to email. And now our third and final speaker of this phase of our meeting is Patty Cronheim, the campaigns director for the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. And she will give us the perspective of the fight against fossil fuel infrastructure in the Garden State, so much of which is built for the New York City market. Patty worked at Rethink Energy New Jersey, where she organized communities statewide to oppose fossil fuel projects such as the Penn East Pipeline and the Northeast Supply Enhancement Project. Patty is developing, overseeing, and leading New Jersey's LCV campaign plans, including stormwater utility and clean energy campaigns. Thank you so much for speaking today, Patty.
Oh, thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be here at Climate Reality Project. And wow, what acts to follow. I think I'd switch the order up next time.
Yeah.
Kim and Anthony, you guys are so inspiring and it's great. Okay, first thing, I'm going to try to share my screen and get it right. So let's see if we can do this. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. No judgment on my dirty screen. Should be up in the second. Okay, can you all see it? Have you got a visual?
Yes.
Okay, great, terrific. All right, so I just, and are you all seeing just the screen? Are you seeing like the screen and all the little pieces as well? Because I'm just already
Just the screen.
okay, perfect, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm Patty Cronheim, as Philip said. I'm with the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, and we are the political voice for the environment in the state of New Jersey. We're a statewide organization, and we help elect environmentally responsible officials, and we hold them accountable. We also advocate for sound environmental policies for that actually, help protect the health of communities, sound, just economies, and the beauty of our state. And thank you for calling it the Garden State. So I'm going to push my little thingy. Got my timer on. So one of the things we did do recently, if you really want to know all the work we do, because we do a lot, one of the things, we bring a lot of folks together and we come up with big policy agendas for legislation and for the administration. We're now working on the first 100 days, first year, 4 years of the Murphy administration. And thank goodness it is the Murphy administration. But before that, we did the environmental policy guide, which is like 77 white papers on everything from plastics to clean electricity, to livable communities, to sound governance, all through, of course, about the environment. But this year, what was different was that we really had a filter for everything had to go through, and it had to be not just climate change, but it had to look at health, it had to look at equity, and it had to look at jobs and equitable jobs. And all of those filters were really part of every single policy paper. So it's on our website if you want to see it. The organizations that are circled in this chart are organizations that one of the coalitions that I've been working on building and acting as a facilitator for. It hasn't launched yet, it's not public yet. It's also called PEEC, it's PEEC, the Progressive Equitable Energy Coalition, New Jersey PEEC. And it's chaired by the NAACP in New Jersey. And we have groups like Latino Action Network and Newark Science and Sustainability and ISLES and Atlantic Climate Justice Alliance. And this came about because we did about a year-long listening process. We went around the state just talking to groups that work in EJ communities and finding out, what it is they want, what it is they need. Do they want support? What would it look like? But just being really good listeners. And what we found out, there were groups that wanted to get together and have more of a seat at the table and lead that table. So we're doing everything we can to help facilitate that. We don't have a vote. We simply are leveraging our power or any resources we have to help support folks from so they can have more capacity to do the work they want to do. And we feel as a traditionally white-led organization that that's the right role for us to play. So in the meantime, fossil fuels are still plaguing our state. They are not going away. They're still doing the last hurrah. So this is just sort of our map. It's nowhere near as cool as Kim's map, but it certainly has a lot of information on it. The purple ones are all sort of lines, are all sort of existing pipelines. The red ones, the red and the hot pink ones were proposed ones. So on my watch, since I've been with Rethink, and I started as an angry woman with a clipboard, frankly, that was how I got started. And so I've always just sort of been fighting these things. I started with PennEast. PennEast went down, and that is really exciting. We're hoping now it's really down for the count, and it's down in Pennsylvania as well. We are watching to see that happens. We're still engaged and want to take care of our friends in Pennsylvania, make sure that they have the same outcome we're having in New Jersey. But so PennEast, Nessie, fought that with Kim, and she's on New York side, I was on the New Jersey side, and we had a good time. The one good thing of that was meeting Kim and meeting all the great New York folks. So those went down. At the very bottom of the little X down there, you see that was the South Jersey Industry Pipeline. That one went down, and it went down because Ørsted primarily showed an economic interest in the ability to take over a gas plant down south, the BL England plant. And that's now going to be an interconnection site for offshore wind. So that's an opportunity, it's an opportunity to sort of use economics to do the right thing. A lot of the work we do, we don't just look at this from an environmental perspective. And we certainly didn't do that with Rethink Energy. We really looked at things in terms of need, helping make sure there were the right studies, the right experts, the right lawyers, and looking at this from every possible perspective so to help these projects go down. Unfortunately, there are still some things that are cooking in New Jersey, and these are just the biggest ones I've put up. At the very top is the Texas Eastern Compressor Station in West Milford. That's an expansion where the gas would go into New York. It's kind of like the answer to Nessie that we knew wasn't needed in the first place, but now this is, an economic opportunity, and they're trying to push that through. There's the REAE, which is yet another Williams Transco project, which stands for the reliable energy access expansion. And that's in West Deptford. And I actually have a meeting with those folks right after this one. I have a presentation on this for them. And then, of course, there's the LNG plant, which is very close to that. So these are the sort of ongoing fights that we've got sort of cooking in New Jersey that we're engaged with. Come on, click. Come on. Why is it not moving? Okay, my screen has frozen and will not go to the next slide.
Sometimes if you
There we go.
reduce it, there you go.
There you go. No, I just went to I have double screens. So it was like talking. Thank you, Kim, you're my tech guru. So the LNG plant, one thing that there's been really a lot of great momentum on the ground. So you've got 11 towns passing resolutions to stop it. So that's really good news. But there's this really cool opportunity that we've got, and I'm gonna, hopefully I'll put this up in the chat later. But as a lot of you are aware, PHMSA is looking at reevaluating the recent rule under the Trump administration to allow LNG by rail. Well, the LNG plant to Gibbstown had a special permit to allow LNG by rail before that. So we're doing an action that goes in on this open docket, which is open till around mid-December, to say, yeah, great, you're looking at getting rid of LNG by rail. We fully support that. And while you're at it, don't extend this special permit to allow LNG by rail to the Gibbstown plant, because that's going to, it's really dangerous, and we need to get rid of that. So this is the action, and I'll put it in the chat later. And of course, there's the West Deptford compressor station. You all know about compressor stations. You all know how bad they are. You've all probably been involved with them. One of the things we did was look at the compressor station location as it relates to overburdened communities as defined by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. We were able to lay these over, and we're hoping to fight this in one of the ways by using the new cumulative impacts law that New Jersey has. So that's something that we're hoping to be able to use to good effect for the first time. And one of the things that's really disturbing that I want to bring up is that this plant in West Deptford is a total greenwashing plant for hydrogen. Williams Transco is saying, we're going to make clean hydrogen. Well, they're going to make it out of frack gas. So we know that's not clean. But they're also, this is a big thing we're saying, trying to get hydrogen mixed with frack gas into pipelines so they can keep the business model of keeping pipes going into people's homes. We know it's more expensive. We know it's less efficient. There's a huge amount of energy loss. We know it's going to be more expensive, right? You know, it requires the building of more pipelines because hard steel can't handle hydrogen. It embrittles it. So you need a different kind of steel. It requires more compression stations because you have to move it 3 times as fast. And we also know that while hydrogen may not burn carbon dioxide, it produces more nitrogen dioxide, which is a huge environmental justice issue. And that's a big deal. So we really just, want to spread far and wide that there is a big lie going on. This is a campaign in New Jersey that the Fuel Merchants Association is doing. And they're putting these actual ads that your heat pumps are going to freeze to death with building electrification. And it's just horrible. And this is what we're up against in New Jersey. This is going to be the big fight in our state. And we're gearing up to get ready to fight this. All about biofuels, RNG, and hydrogen mixed with frack gas to keep their dirty business model of keeping pipes going into our homes. And why in New Jersey is this so important? Well, in New Jersey, the #1 pollution-related cause of death is from buildings. And you can see that road, electrical power generation industry, they've all been sort of creeping down or stabilizing, but buildings are going up because New Jersey runs the risk of being the first fully developed out state in the nation. And our buildings are killing us. And of course, the indoor air quality issues can be worse than the outdoor, as I'm sure most of you know. And, cooking with gas and gas heating systems, are definitely an environmental justice issue. And there's a 42% increased risk of asthma in children that have gas stoves. And, with older appliances, more people using them, and, sometimes even used for heat. If people don't have enough money or their heat gets turned off by unethical landlords, that this is all a health issue. So the outdoor and the indoor air quality makes buildings a huge issue and why we have to move forward. On a positive note, just on the good things we're doing, we've created a new offshore wind campaign called New Jersey Windworks, because in New Jersey, we got a lot of NIMBY folks with very, very expensive second homes who don't want to ever see anything out in the ocean ever, ever, ever. And so we've had to create a public facing campaign to get people to be engaged constructively for responsibly developed offshore wind. Not, we want it to be done right, but that's, where we need to get more public support. And that's my timer, and I'm finished. So, phew. So that's my email, my phone number, and I'm happy to, answer any questions or follow up with anybody afterwards as well. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you to all three of our speakers. This is a very important part of the fight. We've been focused on national policy and so on, but we have to continually fight locally, try to limit the use of fossil fuels in our society. You guys all are doing a great job at that. Thank you so much.
Okay, and now Faith is going to lead us in moderate a panel discussion with our three panelists. So over to Faith.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for those amazing presentations. Learned so much, but definitely want to ask you all some questions. But before I start, just want to remind everyone to stick around after the discussion is done. We're going to introduce our new committee, which is the Corporate Activation Committee. So stick around after this, but definitely want to start with some questions. So first off, the first question I'm going to direct to Anthony, but I would love to hear from you as well, Kim and Patty. So Regina fears that waiting until 2040 to get to net zero will not leave us at 1.5 degrees. Some have suggested we've already crossed tipping points that will launch us beyond that no matter what. So what do you think about that, Anthony? And then I'd love to hear from Kim and Patty as well.
Yeah, no, I ideally we would have this done by 2030. I think that 2040 is kind of like we can't go any later than that, and that's actually what CLCPA says. Now again, it's not to net zero, right? We need to get to zero emissions as quickly as possible, and of course this has to be a global achievement, not just one in New York State. So I share the concerns. What we do know is, yes, that the Paris Climate Accords were and are inadequate, that even with Paris, we would hit somewhere between 1.8 and 1.9. So we have to move quickly. Just some good news. I don't want to be, the downer on this, but also not too Pollyannish, is that we were told that the energy storage, battery storage technology is really increasing precipitously. So that should remove more barriers. The biggest barriers right now, of course, are the political barriers. That's what it is. It's not a lack of technology. It's a lack of political valor and political will, and an understanding that our economy does not have to be tied to fossil fuels. And so it's not just, energy. We hear energy independence. It's everything from plastics and all of the things, that we create, fertilizers and whatnot. So many aspects of the economy have to be transformed immediately. I happen to think that a combination of getting off these fossil fuels and transforming the way that we produce food could be very, very helpful. Regenerative agriculture can buy us some time. And that's one thing that we're also pushing throughout the state and throughout the country.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Kim and Patty, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Well, the legislation that I spoke of is aiming to move us off of fossil fuel buildings in new construction by December 31st, 2023. So, that's something that we really need to pass this session. So we're going to need all of us to really pitch in and get that passed in both the House and both the Assembly and the Senate in New York State. So I do believe, we're, I was telling my friend the other day, I've been watching our Sane Energy Project, presentations over the last decade. And it's in 18 years, we have this much time left before the planet may be unsustainable for life to exist, you know. And then I've been watching how it's just been like, oh, next year I have to make it 17 years. And now we're like at 8 years. Like if we don't make these changes, you know, we are already seeing, you know, devastation from climate change. So it's like, we know it's here. If we allow them to talk about 2040 and 2050 and 2070, some folks are talking about it at COP. You know, it's like, how much do we want to live? Like, let's talk about that.
And I agree with everything Anthony and Kim have said. I want to add that what I'm really concerned about, what I think we need to do a better job as advocates about, is educating the public on the importance of a full economy-wide electrification. I think what I see starting to happen in the political halls in Washington and in New Jersey is that the whole same, you know, like they make you wear a mask, they're teaching making your children learn race theory, they're taking away your liberties, you know, really aggressive, fear-based policy they are now doing with your furnaces. They're taking away your heater. They're taking away, it's that same game plan. And we need to get ahead of that. We need to get so ahead of that and need to be, you know, aggressive about it as well. I mean, I think with hydrogen, it wouldn't be that hard. You know, I mean, hydrogen is 5 times more explosive and more of an impact than gas. But I think we need to really be able to tell people that, you know, your gas stove is killing you. And this is safe and this is healthy. And we have to have really good examples for this. And I think we just have to get really ahead of it and proactive and better about it, because we could lose a cultural war with this, which would make the politics and everything else harder as well. And I don't mean to be a downer about it, but I think that's a reality we're starting to see.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, you know, Patty, I would love to hear your thoughts and then hear from everyone else as well, because you were kind of talking about, you know, a big lie in your presentation. And I think misinformation is really rampant now. It's something that among the members of the Environmental Justice Committee, we talk a lot about how do you combat it? And sometimes you don't even realize that you're getting it. So what are your thoughts on how we can kind of fight against misinformation? Like, what are some tips for people to kind of be able to see it? And also when they're having conversations to really be able to kind of fight against it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think, you know, we tend to be very polite. I don't know, I was Democrats or liberals. I think we have to be bolder. I think we have to have really short talking points. You know, I think you have to call a lie when you see it. And I don't usually, this is the first time in a PowerPoint I've ever written the big lie on something, because that's not, you know, is that professional? Is that what, but it's like, I'm done. You know, I turned 61 years old last Sunday, and, you know, building electrification is probably going to be the last fight I fight. And without it, you know, these pipes stay in the ground, the fracking keeps happening, and hydrogen is a big part of this problem. I even see renewable companies, you know, a lot of renewable companies having the renewables over here, and they say, oh, we're going to make hydrogen out of renewables. You're never going to be able to make enough hydrogen from excess renewables to you know, power heat homes. This is a total fallacy. So I think we just have to be bold. We have to be bolder. We got to be, you know, concise. And we got to be really brutally honest.
Thank you for that. Do you have any thoughts on kind of misinformation and how we fight against it, Kim and Anthony?
I mean, I think I'm with Patty. I mean, we have some weird idea on the left that we can nice our way out of a quintessential crisis. We can nice our way out of an adversary that will use any tactics to win. I, of course, have so much admiration for the former First Lady and lawyer, I should say lawyer and former First Lady, I should say Michelle Obama. And I also agree with, this is probably the only time I agree with Eric Holder when he said, no, not when they go low, we go high. When they go low, kick them. And that's, you know, where we are right now. I think that, you know, when we stick together, and we inform each other like nothing can stop us. You see what Black women did in Georgia in 2021, which has brought us to the point that we have a bipartisan infrastructure framework and Build Back Better Act, is that they just didn't listen to noise. They knocked doors, they went in the streets. They told the Democratic Party, please keep your white consultants out of Georgia. Just send us the money and let us do our thing. And we're able to control the information that way. You can't really give any time. I don't think we have time to fight force with force. I kind of call it social Aikido. We have to intentionally circumvent the BS and just reach our people, and speak in terms that everyone understands. Kim, myself, Patty, we go to parts of our respective states where people don't necessarily agree with us. I'm a Black guy from Brooklyn with dreadlocks. When I go and speak to farmers about the climate crisis, I may not talk about climate change, but I will talk about how big ag is screwing them and how regenerative agriculture is going to give them more money per crop yield. And therefore, in my mind, it's really good for climate change. So we have to switch up our tactics rather than worrying about what the other side is doing. We've got to worry about what we're doing and go do it better.
Thank you so much for that. And just our last question, because I know we're getting close to time. This is a question that's been coming from Anshul, and also Regina has some thoughts as well. And Kim was kind of weighing in on our chat. But most scientists agree clean energy without nuclear is a pipe dream. So, just wondering what your thoughts are on that, Kim. I'm not sure if you kind of want to expand a little bit on what you were saying, but how do we have this kind of compromise? And I think even for myself, I think when we have the compromise, but we are harming communities that are already disproportionately impacted, like how do we think about that? So Kim, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts first, but Anthony and Patty, of course, if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear those as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. We stand firmly against nuclear extraction and nuclear power. As I mentioned in the chat, it has, the extraction process of nuclear is absolutely devastating, especially on this land that, we call the United States, which is Turtle Island, is devastating and targeting Indigenous nations. And, I've met these people, I've talked to them, and if you have too, you'd realize how that one part of the very toxic process of nuclear can't be a part of our solution equation. And then, the end goal of nuclear is storage of spent fuel rods. We're dealing with overflowing spent fuel rods, 50 miles north of New York City right now at Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant with a massive high pressure fracked gas pipeline going under that. This stuff is not safe. And, it also is talking about, Anthony and I both touched on, changing up how we talk about our worldview, like what we look out at, like how we're talking about these things. And when we talk about renewable energy, we're not talking about replacing wind power or replacing a fossil fuel economy with like wind power and solar and just keeping the same system as it goes. We have to have a whole uproot of how these large corporations have held the entire life on this planet hostage for personal profits. And a lot of that is because of the extraction and the dig, burn, and dump mentality that has to switch up. And nuclear is part of that. I went on tour with Dr. Arjun Makhijani throughout New York State, who is a nuclear fusion scientist who is vehemently against nuclear power and fossil fuels. So, Anshul, I know that you mentioned it's an unscientific frame, but it is actually how we are building our buildings, how we are growing our food, how we are trading, how we stop this global consumerism and move to a more local, sustainable economy. These are all parts of the question, and there's not just one replace this system with the other system. And it's also about targeting who is responsible for this. It is not the person in India using their air conditioner during a heat wave. It is about targeting and putting out of business the corporations that created that heat wave. And that also has to do with who props them up and who takes their money and who changes our law in order to make them wealthy at the expense of the life on this planet Earth. So it really is a massive like systemic adjustment. So I'm a little heated about this, so I'm going to stop there, and I'll just stop there.
Now, the only thing I would add, I'm heated about as well. Thank you, Sister Kim. We have this idea, right, that climate change is linear, right? Too often, and that's a mistake. We have 8 years, 8 to 10 years to really effectively address this crisis. Nuclear power plants take 15 to 20 to 25 years to come online. So it's not even feasible as it pertains to the physics of time. And they will end up being stranded assets as we have seen. And then yes, there's this issue of equity. I'm sorry, this waste is not ending up in Chappaqua or Ithaca. It's ending up in indigenous, Black, brown, and poor white communities. No more, I can't stand by and allow for there to be any more sacrifice zones so that I can heat and cool my home comfortably, that there is a moral failure to that level of thinking. Now, we maybe, and I probably would have fought it like, in the 1990s as well, even though I was young, but we can't have to be thinking about 20th century solutions for 21st century challenges. That's just not going to work anymore. The age of nuclear is gone. It's just not feasible. It's too expensive. When we know that renewable energy is cheaper and can come online so much faster, why not just go in that route? It's sort of like trying to touch my right elbow by going across my back. It just doesn't make any sense anymore.
Thank you so much. Patty, do you have anything to add as we kind of close out, or?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, nuclear is not the future. And for all of the reasons mentioned, we do have nuclear in New Jersey right now that makes about 40% of our electricity generation. And the plan is to phase it out by 2040. If we phase it out earlier, precipitously earlier, and it takes a while to phase out a nuclear plant, it's not like you just flip a switch, as you'll know. But what happens is the cost of renewable energy transition goes through the roof, and that really harms the people who can least afford it. So we have to be careful to phase it out 2040, not build any more, for goodness sakes, which would be too expensive anyway, and is never going to happen because it'd be far too expensive. But it's also about making sure that we're not paying through the nose to keep these plants open, which in New Jersey we are. PSE&G has got us over balance, so we're going to turn them right off. So we're paying $300 million a year because they're staying unprofitable. Now we've got a second-term governor who's saying, "Oh, you know what? Now that I'm a second-term governor, we're going to relook and reopen these books and see how much we're paying you to keep these open." So I think they were subsidized to be built in the first place. Why the heck are we paying ratepayers paying through the nose to keep them open? We got to get them off by 2040 and do it in such a way where we can get the renewables up, and then we say goodbye to them, which is where they belong. They belong in the rearview mirror.
Thank you so much, Kim, Anthony, and Patty. What a great discussion. Thank you so much for your presentations as well. And we thank Meera, who kind of kicked us off in just a beautiful way. Thank you all. And want to encourage everyone to kind of stick around. We are going to be launching a new committee. So we already have our climate moment committee, we have the environmental justice committee and the food committee, but tonight we're going to launch the corporate activation committee. And it's really, really exciting. Heather Chun and Phoebe Amelia Bauer are going to kind of kick it off. So I would love to hand it over to you both to kind of talk about the corporate activation committee, why you're starting it, and to tell us a little bit more.
I have to hop off. I'm sorry, I've got another presentation. I just wanted to say thank you.
So I thank you so much, y'all.
Yeah, and if there's any New Jerseyans, New Jersey climate, climate folks, and you want to hook up, we got a new activist program. I'd love to work with you and get you working on some of these projects. So Paul knows how to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
Good night to you all. And I'll hand it over to Phoebe and Heather.
Thank you so much, Faith.
we'll give it a couple minutes to let, or a couple, maybe 30 seconds to let people roll off the call that wanna end the call, and then we'll kick off.
While people are making that decision, I just want to say what a great meeting. I'm really, really powerful meeting, and great speakers, great conversation, and the poem that brought me really, it was really powerful. So I think you're okay to go now, Heather.
Okay, great. Phoebe, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I am
Great,
good.
great.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So we are in the process of forming a corporate activation committee, and we're really excited to share why we wanted to create this committee, what it is, the background and goals, and really formulate what this committee could look like with all of you, and want to see if you're interested in joining to help shape this committee with us. Phoebe and I would like to start with introductions. There are quite a few people, so perhaps the two of us can introduce ourselves, and then we'll give you guys some background. And if there are any questions that you have, then please raise your hand, and then we can call your name out. Phoebe, go ahead.
Sure. So hi, I'm Phoebe, and as you can probably tell, I am from the UK. So thank you for welcoming me to New York. I'm having a great time. So by way of background, I spent 8 years working in London, Hong Kong, and Singapore as a lawyer, focusing on sovereign debt and ESG financing and structuring. So I got to 8 years of practicing law and thought, what would my best next challenge be? So I decided to enroll at Columbia to study energy and environment. And so I'm looking to learn more about the climate crisis and how it is impacting on our daily lives, and to figure out what I can do about it. So I recently did the Climate Reality Project training and mentor, and he was in putting me in touch with people to fulfill my objectives and to really use my strengths to do something proactive and contribute to my New York community. So Heather and I got together with Paul, and we were brainstorming what we could do. And one of the things that became really obvious to us was the need to start putting in place systematic changes at the corporations that we work with. So on that note, I'll hand you over to Heather, who can tell you some more about her.
Thanks, Phoebe. So I'm Heather Chun. I took the climate reality training in the spring. Paul was my mentor as well. Thank you, Paul. I work at Credit Suisse, and over the pandemic, I really thought about how I can channel my energy and really focus on this work on sustainability. So I joined the Credit Suisse Sustainability Employee Resource Group. And one of the first things that I wanted to do was extend the invitation of the climate reality training to employees. And that kind of opened up this whole opportunity at Credit Suisse on how we can leverage the climate reality platform to educate and activate people within Credit Suisse to support Credit Suisse's sustainability goals, and to make sure that employees are aware of the climate science and the solutions and incorporate it into their day-to-day jobs, their volunteer work within the bank or outside and in their personal lives. So that's basically how
the inception of the idea of this committee. If we're able to activate people within one company, what if we can do this across companies, across industries? And New York being such a hub of commerce, I think we can have quite some impact using this model of activation within companies. So that's kind of the background of why we wanted to start this committee, and the goals as to why. So to inspire people to get activated within their companies, and secondly, also to develop a living, breathing document about how we're able to successfully do this in different kinds of businesses and big corporations like mine, on Broadway, for example, with their Green Alliance, and with many, many other types of companies. So with that, was there anything else that you wanted to add, Phoebe, to that? I think she is, her video looks a little frozen.
Well, it would be really wonderful if you could tell us some more about your own.
Yeah, I didn't. I think.
Apologies, my internet is people. Sorry about that. I'm having severe internet issues. Just at the right time. I guess everyone wants to use the internet right now. So yeah, Heather, it would be really wonderful to hear more about your Credit Suisse experience, because you've been having some wonderful successes, and I think everyone would love to hear about those because it's super inspiring.
Thank you, Phoebe. I would love to share. So thanks to Paul and his help getting me 5 seats for Credit Suisse employees to join the recent training after registration closed. We sent it out to the Sustainability Network distribution list, and we had a tremendous response of people wanting to take the training. And it's quite a commitment. I think most of us have gone through the training. And we selected 5 people. They represent different divisions across the bank. And they were super excited to attend this training. And one of the 5 suggested that we meet before the training to talk about motivations as to why we all want to take it from the lens of Credit Suisse and personally. And then also after the training to talk about the types of acts of leadership that they're going to pursue at the bank off the back of the training. So while this was happening, I was thinking, why don't we create a climate reality leadership core within the bank, so that we can take these 5 new leaders who have gone through the training and have them educate other employees within the bank. I think different companies are going to be structured differently. It just so happens that in mine, we're already sustainability and ESG oriented, environment, social governance, ESG oriented. And we have a sustainability division where the CEO of that division reports into the CEO of the overall bank. So it's really integrated in our strategy and our business model to ensure that sustainability is a main pillar. So we're lucky there. Plus we have the employee resource groups global in different regions globally to support it. So I'm working in this space of support already for something like this to happen. The first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we got buy-in from people in the sustainability divisions and in other divisions that are working on sustainability as part of their business. So we are actually having a presentation, my second climate reality presentation, and all of the trainees, the other leadership corps' first presentation on December 8th with a select group of people at Credit Suisse who already focus on sustainability to get their buy-in, to get their support, and to get their feedback in terms of how we can make sure that we align the messaging to supporting how we can further the sustainability goals within the bank. So one of the idea is to have additional material at the end of the presentation to talk about what Credit Suisse's sustainability goals are and what all of the individual divisions goals are, so that when we're talking to different teams, it can be aligned and catered and relevant to the audience that we're speaking to. So that's kind of where we're at now. And I am really looking forward to, once we pass that hurdle, to be able to deploy. So I want to be able to talk to teams, to management committees, to different networks, to have open to all employees, all staff within Credit Suisse, like lunch and learns, to be able to share the presentation and also examples of acts of leadership that we have committed to, so that they can be inspired and think about how they can incorporate acts of leadership in their lives. So that's, and another, so a few other branches that have happened through this exploration. One is that the central kind of employee engagement and corporate communications team is super excited. So they want to understand how to get staff to be trained there. So they really want to support us. They want to be able to, they're considering funding employees once climate reality training is back in person, to fund their travel to get to the location, so that people can go through the training in person. They also want to write a global feature on what we're doing as an example of employee engagement in this realm. And they want to, they have an idea of partnering with Climate Reality Project to develop corporate training, which would be absolutely amazing if they do that, because again, that can be replicated across all these different businesses. So I will stop there. I'm super excited, as you can probably see, and really looking forward to kicking this off and sharing and hearing about other examples of how people activate within their organizations.
Thank you so much, Heather. And so we have a sign-up form which is available for everyone, and I dropped that in the chat. So it's a Google form and you can sign up, and we'll create a mailing list so we can share lots of new information and any exciting developments we have with you. So just to recap, we have two main goals. The first, to inspire people to activate within their corporation and to engage with their companies and employers and fellow employees on Climate Reality Project and the climate issues that are important to you. And the second is we're going to try and develop this living, breathing document of best practices. We'd like to open it up for questions and suggestions now. So if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, could you just raise your hand using the reactions tool? So we can get through everyone in an orderly manner. Very friendly, and we're very welcoming of any questions you may have, or comments or suggestions.
I see Regina.
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, Regina. You just need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm on my phone because my computer is not working. Yeah,
Hello,
I'm interested.
welcome.
Thank you. It's very interesting, and you're both very excited and you know, very passionate about it, which is really great. It's important. I'm wondering how through this process of getting more employees engaged, how do you think it will or can affect? I mean, is your goal to affect the way your company operates in the world, or is it just to influence the employees and their lives and and so forth. Can you address that?
Yeah, so I think I have an answer. Heather, feel free to jump in. So we're very cognizant of the fact that everyone involved in the Climate Reality Project is doing so of their own volition, out of their own time. And that commitment varies from person to person, and the level of engagement from person to person really changes. So what we're really trying to get at here is, if you have an idea that you would like to put forward within your organization, we're key to sort of support you with that, whether it's, you know, doing the presentation within your workplace or forming a subchapter within that workplace. We're hoping to create a system of best practices to support you with that.
But I'm sorry. So, but I don't think that addresses my question.
If
go ahead. We can't hear.
You have to force your employer to make change, because everyone sort of has a different level of commitment and a different relationship with their employer. If that's something that somebody wanted some assistance and guidance with, we'd like to support them with that. But we understand, you know, that you're working within a workplace and you may not be comfortable sort of forcing your employer to change their practices, etc. But if there is that willingness to engage in that way, we're very keen to support it. And I mean, if you take Heather's example, she's really enabled to change.
Yeah, I'm losing you again.
Within her organization of work and a big time commitment for her. So I don't know, Heather, if you want to sort of add how you framed your discussions and what sort of motivated you to in that particular level of change.
I think in my situation, the company that I work for is committed and is, you know, so I'm working in a space where people are moving in the same direction, and it's not always the same way in other companies. So in other companies, they may not be thinking about sustainability in their business practice. So I think that different employees feel a different level of comfort. So when I think of corporate activation, I'm thinking also about activism. So if somebody is bold enough to basically make noise within their company, which I think some people are there and willing to do that, then they can help steer their company in the direction that we need companies to go to make these kind of systemic changes. There are going to be other people who don't feel as comfortable, but are able to incorporate, a sustainable lens in their day-to-day job, which is also important. And so we can get this whole spectrum of effect within a company. In my example, one of the things that I thought about was our 401k, for example, does not offer ESG fund options, or the ESG as in sustainable fund options to invest in. So one of my activations within my company was to talk to the chairman of the pension fund and the 401k plan to get him to start thinking about it. He was already thinking about it, which is great. But I thought it was, important for him because he's managing all of our employees' money, and it's like a huge pension fund, to make sure that he hears from employees. So that's an example of an act of leadership within a company where somebody can actually try to effect change.
Okay. I think I'm next with my hand up, but then there's Stephanie Lucas as well.
Stephanie!
I just want to mention that, there's many ways to impact corporations. And I know this from my experience in working for a large corporation. And some of them, the most impactful ones are from governments, impact their organization, companies, through regulation and taxation. Also through another big one is the shareholders and the board of directors of companies can make a big impact on companies. But the third area, the third stakeholder, let's call it, that can make a big impact on companies is actually the employees who work there. And I think that's what this group is all about. It's about that stakeholder, the employees. And the ability to make change within any organization or any company is so different depending on that company. And some are more open to that, some are less open to that. And I think what's really critical is that through this initiative, you will be at least facilitating that to happen. If this group didn't come to be, and your initiative, Heather, and there's other initiatives in the group, didn't come to be, there wouldn't be this, increased awareness and this platform, let's call it, for the climate reality leaders to make change within their companies. So I think it's great. And I know it's difficult. I worked in a large corporation. I know it's difficult sometimes to navigate those waters and figure out what's possible and what's not possible. We know that companies like Amazon and Facebook were really impacted by their employees, and they're now not using they're not using all renewable energy as an example. I mean, they may have other problems we don't like, but they're using renewable energy, and that's something that's good. That came about to a large extent because employees pushed for that. So I hope that you, Heather, and Phoebe will find some members of your team, which will maybe make that kind of change, but also, just if the organization starts composting or people become more aware and they start voting differently at home. I mean, these are definitely impacts that you'll make. And so I'm really excited about your committee. So I have to say, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make that comment as someone who worked in a big corporation before. So anyway, let me pass it over to Stephanie now, who I think has a question.
I don't have a question, but I also
Okay.
have comments. I actually work with Heather as a nonprofit partner. I work for Madison Square Park Conservancy, and Heather has joined our sustainability committee. And I just want to talk about how great it is that Heather and Phoebe are sort of doing this work on the corporate side, because so many nonprofit partners really depend on corporations for volunteers, for advisory groups, for board members. So to have people with these expertise advising nonprofit partners and their business partners and their internal employees is just so valuable to see those values throughout their organization and throughout the reach that they have. So if you have a corporation, please join in, or you're an employee, that'd be great. The whole community values it.
Thank you. Phil, I see your hand up. And I think you're on mute. Good to see you,
Thank
Phil.
you. Yes. Your firm is I mean, they're different directions. It's clear that your firm envisions a sustainable place for it in the world long term, so that they definitely want to get there, and managing climate change is a key thing. So it's really great that you're getting this sort of support from higher ups. In terms of, has the firm, along the lines of what Regina might have been hinting at, has the firm have goals in terms of limiting its investment in fossil fuels or directing its business that might affect sustainability, or are we not there yet?
They do. They've made a commitment, I think $300 million for green bonds, which is to help companies transition to renewable energy. And they are also helping clients who are maybe, I think the terminology is like more like brown or black, to transition to cleaner operating practices. So they are working with their clients to help support them in transitioning to a green economy, which I think it's important, and we need to include all sorts of different kinds of companies. We can't leave, like, say, for example, the oil and gas companies behind. We need to work with all of them to transition. So yes, they are making commitments.
Right, and Switzerland has a rather robust, one of the highest carbon taxes in Europe. So, I mean, they've been committed towards that for a long time. So it makes sense that an institution based there really would be getting on the program earlier than some of the others. That's great. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome, Phil. Are there any other questions? I just want to remind everyone that in the chat, Phoebe had included a link to sign up for the committee if you're interested in joining us on this journey of forming it, where you can put your name and your email address, and then we'll go from there. We'll reach out to you and be able to start organizing then. Any other questions? Oh, I think Regina, you have your hand up or no? No. Okay, I think we can close. It was really great to meet you and to share you know, this idea that we have, and hopefully we can work with many of you going forward to get activated in your place of business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. I just wanted to jump in to thank both you and Phoebe for leading this initiative. It's amazing. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of power that comes from employees in their workplace, and it's just maybe it's influencing your coworkers, and maybe it's influencing your bosses. And you know, and I think everyone who's interested in joining should just put their foot forward and see what the water's like, and see where they can take it. Because, and I also just would recommend that you keep it a safe space for people, so that if they feel a little bit uncomfortable about how their company works, it's better to get people to join, to get into the committee, and to start exploring these opportunities before they get concerned about, you know, what the potential impacts for them personally are. Because I know that's a concern that many people have about their careers, or about, you know, many things. So I think that keeping that committee as a safe space, but that's a very that can push the boundaries as much as it possibly can within the you know, the capability and the comfort zone of the individuals who are in the group. That would be great. And I look forward to joining your first meeting as well and seeing if I can help in any way.
Thank you. And yeah, just to remind you, the sign up form is in the chat. So we look forward to meeting you all and hearing all your ideas.
Awesome. Thanks. It was a great meeting, everyone. I think this was just one of our best meetings ever. So everyone, I hope you have a nice Thanksgiving, and please enjoy this holiday and relax and recuperate and get ready to fight for the Build Back Better Act to pass Congress and get signed. And this is really important. So anyway, enjoy your holidays, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.